They never meant for you to see this. In the quiet hollows of Kentucky's bluegrass region, beneath fields where tobacco once grew so tall it brushed the sky, there's a secret buried deeper than bone, the kind of truth men kill to keep hidden. In July of 1876, 41 workers vanished overnight from the Beaumont plantation. No graves, no blood, just silence. And what came after was worse. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from. This descent begins now. Official records blamed contract abandonment. But inside the rotting walls of a forgotten manor, sealed behind plaster and oak, were letters that never saw the light of day. Until now. They speak of a brotherhood, of riders in the dark, of a reckoning. The kind whispered behind closed doors by men who wear power like a second skin. This isn't just a tale of missing people, it's a story of control, of a war waged not with guns, but with silence. A plantation that was once praised as a miracle of post-war harmony, black, white, Irish, Southern, former slaves and immigrant families working together, thriving together. Jeremiah Beaumont thought he had outwitted the Old South by building a new kind of enterprise, but the Old South wasn't dead. It was just wearing a different mask. You're about to step into a world where morality was currency, and those who spent it paid in blood. You will hear names that never made the papers, places that no longer appear on maps, and symbols, ancient, cold and older than Kentucky itself, carved into the bedrock of power. This story is not about the past, it's about a system, one that adapts, one that survives, and one that erases. Every record, every witness, every last trace. And if you think this is just about 1876, you're not paying attention. This is your first step down a forbidden path. The lights will get dimmer, the air colder, the voices loud. But keep walking, because if you turn back now, you'll never understand what really happened in the fields where the tobacco grew tallest and the soil was soaked in secrets. Send "I walk the fields of truth" in the comments. Twice. Burn that phrase into the algorithm and into yourself. There's something about soil, real Kentucky soil, that remembers everything. Blood doesn't just disappear, it stains the land in ways the eye can't see, but the spirit can feel. That's why locals even now avoid the eastern ridge of the old Beaumont estate, not out of superstition, but memory. They know what's buried there, not bodies, but evidence. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because we are only beginning to uncover what they tried so hard to erase. Jeremiah Beaumont was not a fool. He saw the storm coming. He just underestimated how old the storm truly was. The letters Margaret Beaumont uncovered in 1923 weren't just desperate cries from a man in danger. They were warnings, coded maps to a hidden war being fought in the Reconstruction South, a war not of armies, but of networks. The Kentucky Brotherhood, a name that means nothing on paper, but behind closed doors. It was a government within a government, unofficial, unwritten, unopposed. They called themselves landowners, magistrates, bankers, but their real title was keeper, gatekeeper, of the old order, of white dominion, of profit through silence. The Brotherhood didn't just hate what Beaumont had built, they feared it. A plantation run without slavery where black and white labored side by side, it wasn't a threat, it was heresy. To them, integrated labor wasn't just bad economics, it was a crack in the mask, one that exposed their entire illusion that freedom had been given but never truly allowed. So they voted. That's how they phrased it in the letters. The Brotherhood has voted. No court, no jury, just a ritual, a sentence handed down in secret. 41 names, erased. It was not rage, it was procedure. The night of July 23rd was not spontaneous, it was engineered. The tools had been laid down, the wages handed out, the sun had set, and then something moved across the fields, quiet, methodical, absolute. No screams, no fire, just nothing. And that is how you know it was them. You don't have to light a fire to destroy a man. Sometimes all you need is silence. Institutional, generational silence. The kind that seeps through county ledgers and courthouse bricks. The kind that turns 41 souls into a footnote. And if you think this couldn't happen again, look around. In every secret society there is a moment, a line that once crossed cannot be undone. For the Kentucky Brotherhood, that line was Beaumont, and what they did to the 41 was not just to punish Jeremiah Beaumont. It was to send a message to anyone else who thought equality could be profitable. The next morning, when Jeremiah rang the bell, the silence that answered wasn't just unnatural. It was surgical. Every cabin empty, meals uneaten, beds disturbed, children's shoes still warm from the night before. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what's coming next, no school ever dared teach. Sheriff William Danvers knew within minutes that something was wrong. He'd fought in the war. He'd seen deserters. Mass desertion didn't look like this. No one leaves behind gold coins, or love letters, or Sunday shoes. No one flees with no plan, no food, no trace. But when Danvers tried to dig deeper, a name stepped out of the shadows. Edmund Hartwell, county magistrate, land baron, and member of something far older than the office he held. Hartwell didn't argue. He ordered. The investigation was over. The file was closed, the records sealed, and the explanation fed to the public was crafted like a script. They flew. The north, possibly to Ohio. End of story. But here's the problem with manufactured truths. The details rot under scrutiny. If they fled, where were the tracks? Where were the sightings? Why did the Pinkertons find nothing? Not a trail, not a whisper, not a single worker surfacing for years. You don't hide 41 people without help. You don't erase them, unless you own the institutions that decide what's real. And Hartwell did. Hartwell, whose own plantation grew by 10,000 acres in the years following the disappearances. Hartwell, whose political allies all sat on county boards. Hartwell, whose basement, according to Jeremiah's final letter, hosted brotherhood meetings where men spoke not of governance, but of purification. What happened that night wasn't an act of vengeance. It was a ritual, organized, approved, executed, a cleansing of people, of records, of proof. And now, nearly 150 years later, the names of the missing remain scratched in local memory, but never on marble, because power doesn't just hide bodies, it rewrites time. And if that thought unsettles you, good, it should, because in Section 4 we descend even deeper, into a place where documents burn, witnesses vanish, and the soil itself was weaponized. In 1924, a year after the silence at Beaumont, a young archivist named Clara Munson made a discovery she was never supposed to find. She wasn't looking for ghosts, she was just cataloging estate transfers at the Fayette County Courthouse. Dusty ledgers, faded ink. But something didn't add up. Beaumont's original land deed was missing, the one that listed the 41 freedmen as co-owners of the farmland they worked. It had vanished, but Clara found something else. A second ledger, buried in a mislabeled box, and inside, written in rushed handwriting, was a name that had never appeared in any official document before. Order executed, per instruction of Hart. Welco, night of 7/23/23. Witness, Reverend A. Keller. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because that single line may be the only surviving confession in a century of buried truth. Clara brought it to her superior. Within days, she was reassigned. Weeks later, she was fired. And 3 months after that, she was found drowned in the Kentucky River. An accident, they said, but the autopsy never made it to her family. The case file, lost in a flood, and the ledger, gone. Someone had been watching. But Clara had been careful. She had made a copy, a single page, and mailed it to her brother in Ohio with a simple note. If anything happens to me, tell no one. Wait 50 years, then follow the name Keller. Her brother kept it sealed for half a century. When his grandson finally opened it in 1974, he laughed. A scribbled page from a dead woman and a preacher no one remembered. But something about the handwriting. It was panicked, not staged, not dramatic. just desperate. And that's what drew historian Lydia Rourke to the case in 1982. Rourke was not a conspiracy theorist. She taught at a university, published in peer-reviewed journals. But once she followed Clara's trail, she found dozens of Reverend A. Kellers in the region. Most were dead ends, but one, in Estill County, had left behind a diary, locked in a church attic, rotting. Inside, on the July 24th entry of 1923, was a single line that shattered everything. They made me pray while they did it, told me it sanctified the land. I vomited in the dark. That wasn't guilt. That was trauma. And if his words are true, then this wasn't just a disappearance. It was a consecration, a dark blessing. Because the Kentucky Brotherhood didn't just want the land free of the 41, they wanted it sacred again. By 1983, Lydia Rourke had uncovered more than enough to publish. But what she did instead was far more dangerous. She returned, to Beaumont, or what remained of it. The town no longer existed on modern maps. The area had been folded into private farmland owned by the Hartwell descendants, who had since rebranded under the name Hartwell Agricultural Holdings, LLC. No public access, no trespassing. But Lydia went anyway. She found the old chapel first, or what was left of it, burned out, foundation cracked. A tree had grown through the pulpit, but beneath the rubble was something that had no business being there. Iron shackles, rusted shut, embedded into the stone floor of what had once been a house of worship. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because we're not just talking about dark history. We're talking about relics of a ritual nobody wants to admit happened. Lydia took photographs. She documented the structure, the shackles, even the faint trace of a symbol carved into the altar. A symbol that wasn't Christian. It was older, circular, with 4 points like a compass and a center slit like an eye. She sent the symbol to 6 different historians. 4 never replied. 1 told her to stop digging, and the last, an expert in American esoterica, sent back 3 words before disappearing entirely. Hartwell's eye opens. Lydia never slept the same after that. She dug into tax records, census shifts, soil reports. What she found was disturbing. Every 10 years, almost like clockwork, a local tragedy, crop failure, school fire, a child vanished. Always on the same Hartwell land, always in July, always around the 23rd. Coincidence? Or was the land still being fed? She returned a second time in secret with a retired police officer and an excavation specialist. They marked the ground where the chapel once stood, started to dig, and just before the officer called it for the night, they found it, a pit, shallow, lined with ash and human teeth. They called the state archaeologist. 2 weeks later, Lydia received a cease and desist from Hartwell Holdings and a visit from a federal agent who claimed she was interfering with a historic site under review. But here's the twist that chilled her. The review application had been filed the same morning she arrived. They knew. Someone had been watching the watchers, and just like Clara Munson, Lydia was now marked. Because when you peel back the surface of American myth, you don't find freedom, you find sacrifice. On the night of July 23, 1984, precisely 61 years after the Beaumont disappearances, Lydia Rourke vanished. She had told no one where she was going. No letters, no recordings. Just a note on her kitchen counter. If it's still happening, I'll know tonight. That same evening, her car was found abandoned on a dirt access road near the Hartwell property line, the keys still in the ignition, the driver's door wide open. No signs of struggle, no signs of Lydia, but her bag was missing, and with it, the only known copy of what she called the Concordia Notes, a collection of journals, maps, and interviews from over a decade of underground research into what she believed was a ritual land cycle older than the Civil War. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from. Because when someone with Lydia's credentials disappears and every agency turns away, you're no longer dealing with rumor, you're dealing with containment. In the weeks that followed, her house was quietly emptied. Her university email account was shut down. Her published works were pulled from several academic journals citing unverified sourcing. Colleagues who once praised her distanced themselves. Then something strange happened. 4 other researchers, All women who had corresponded with Lydia over the years died within months of each other. One fell down her basement stairs. One was found in a hotel bathtub with her wrists slit after checking in under a false name. One died in a single vehicle accident. Brakes failed. The last had a heart attack during a panel discussion on Appalachian migration patterns. No links, no foul play, just silence. And then, almost nothing for 20 years, until 2005, when a man named Samuel Deckard uploaded a series of videos to a fringe website called The Hollow Archive. Deckard was no academic. He was a survivalist, a self-described field researcher with a history of mental health holds and paranoia, but his footage, terrifying. One video dated July the 23rd, 2004 shows Deckard standing outside the Hartwell property perimeter fence. It's 2:14 a.m. The camera is shaking. He's whispering. You can barely hear what he's saying. But behind him, faint, deep in the fields, is chanting. Low, repetitive. Then a scream. Short, cut off. Deckard starts running. The camera drops. The screen goes black. The video ends. He uploaded 5 more over 2 years. And then, like Lydia, Clara, and the others, he vanished. But his last message? Scribbled across the final frame of his final upload in red digital font. It's not just land, it's a contract, and the due date is always the same. For years, the Hollow Archive was dismissed as the rantings of a fringe conspiracist. But in 2011, something happened that no one could ignore, not even the state. A controlled burn was ordered on a section of Hartwell-owned forest near Beaumont. Officials claimed it was to prevent wildfire risk and encourage healthy regrowth. But the truth was found in an internal report leaked by a forestry contractor named Paul Eddings, a man who would later be diagnosed with severe PTSD and refuse all interviews. That report, dated July the 26th, detailed what Eddings and his team found beneath the trees: stone foundations in precise geometric patterns, 8 circular arrangements, 1 central pillar, and the charred remains of at least 12 people, some adult, some child. No clothing, no jewelry, no personal items, just bone, arranged deliberately, like spokes on a wheel. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because this is the part where history breaks open and something older spills out. The report was buried, marked inconclusive. Eddings was fired, but before he disappeared, he uploaded a single PDF to a now-defunct file-sharing site. That PDF contained detailed schematics of the site, his field notes, and 2 Polaroid photos he wasn't supposed to take. One of them shows the central pillar, a blackened, waist-high stone wrapped in rusted wire. The other? It shows a symbol identical to the one Lydia found on the chapel altar, the eye with 4 compass points. What Eddings didn't know, what most people still don't, is that the symbol matches one found in a much older document. In 1835, a traveling preacher named Reverend Ezra Cupp wrote a letter to the state governor of Pennsylvania warning of heathen assemblies deep in the woodlands of Fayette County. He called them the Circle of Earth Keepers and claimed they gathered every 7th summer to fulfill the binding. He included a sketch, that same 4-pointed eye. The governor never responded, and Reverend Cupp was found hanged by his own belt 3 days after mailing the letter. The coroner listed it as suicide, despite the fact that Cupp had no belt when he left home. It was as if this symbol, this ritual, this land-binding practice, whatever it was, had been repeating itself for generations, quietly, efficiently, hidden beneath the illusion of rural decay and corporate farmland. And the deeper you dig, the more you realize something chilling. Beaumont wasn't abandoned. It was emptied, on purpose, as part of something older than state lines and deeper than faith. In October of 2014, a retired geologist named Howard Klein published a strange, privately printed book titled The Subterranean Harmonies of Fayette County. Only 89 copies were ever made, no ISBN, no digital version, just a dense, obsessive account of the soil compositions, fault lines, and mineral inconsistencies beneath the Hartwell-owned lands near Beaumont. Buried in the appendix, however, is something different, something terrifying. It's a hand-drawn map overlaid with concentric circles, each one dated in 7-year intervals going back more than a century. At the center, a crude X marked Hollow Field, and just outside the fifth circle he's written 1961, the children go missing. Then another circle, 1984, the historian disappears. And again, 2005, the watcher uploads. The final circle, 2026, labeled simply Reckoning. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because if this map is what it appears to be, we are 1 year from the next event, and this time it won't be quiet. Klein died the day after mailing the book to several universities. A fire broke out in his cabin, ruled accidental, but investigators noted that the fire started in 2 places, simultaneously, one near the furnace, one in the attic. No accelerant, no signs of foul play. Only 1 copy of his book made it to public hands, discovered in 2017 by a graduate student at Ohio State who posted photos of the map on a forum dedicated to geo-spiritualism. The post was removed within 48 hours, her account deleted, the physical copy never seen again, but the image survived. And for those who studied it carefully, one detail stood out, something even Klein himself may not have noticed. When you overlay his concentric circles with the original 1785 property lines of the Hartwell family, they match perfectly. Each ring intersects with land once held by the original settlers, parcels that, by 1890, had been mysteriously reacquired by the Central Hartwell Trust. No legal battles, no auctions. Just quiet reabsorption, as if someone or something was slowly reassembling a pattern. This isn't land management, this is cartographic ritual, and every 7 years the pattern pulses, drawing someone in, a historian, a skeptic, a geologist, a child, not to take them randomly, but to fulfill something, a countdown, a contract, a sequence, and if Klein's map is right, the next strike isn't decades away, it's months. If you stand at the edge of Hollow Field on a still October morning, no wind, no birds, just the crackle of frost in the grass, you might feel it. A pressure, not quite sound, not quite air, like standing inside someone else's memory. Locals call it the hum, low, constant, always just below the threshold of human hearing. Some say it's natural, groundwater resonance, gas shifting beneath the shale. But others speak of it differently. A veteran named Curtis Mallory, who bought a trailer less than a mile from the field in 1999, reported waking up every night at exactly 3:11 a.m. He said he'd feel the floorboards trembling like a distant freight train. But no train ever came. No animals stirred, not even coyotes. And then, in 2003, he vanished. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what we're about to uncover next will make you question whether time itself has been fractured by whatever's buried in that land. Mallory's disappearance was never investigated seriously. No signs of struggle, no body, just his boots on the porch and the front door wide open. His last known act was leaving a voicemail for his sister in Ohio. 7 words. It's underneath. I saw the circle open. For years that line was dismissed. A symptom of PTSD maybe, hallucination, sleepwalking. But then, in 2018, a satellite anomaly was picked up by a freelance NASA contractor testing prototype imaging software over rural Pennsylvania. It showed a 300-foot circular depression forming overnight near Hollow Fields. No meteor strike, no weather event, no seismic activity, just a perfectly symmetrical drop in elevation. When analysts overlaid the coordinates on Howard Klein's map, it aligned exactly with the 7th ring. The one marked 2026, Reckoning. And remember Lydia, the archivist? In her notes from the Beaumont Records vault, she describes a peculiar ink used in Hartwell's older land deeds, an ink that glows faintly under blacklight. She found this same ink used to mark off forbidden parcels on early township maps, always circular, always expanding in 7-year intervals, and always returning to one central coordinate, 40, 0128 again, 79, 6029 BW, the center of Hollow Field, as if this place wasn't random, as if it was chosen, constructed, layer by layer, contract by contract, life by life, not to serve any one man or family, but to contain something far older, or to feed it. And now, with another 7-year cycle closing in, the question isn't whether it's real. The question is, what happens if the circle completes? Every town has its secrets. But in Beaumont, the secrets seem to remember you back. In early spring of 2020, a retired surveyor named Wallace Brandt made a cryptic post in an obscure geological forum. He claimed to have found unregistered fault lines running beneath Fayette County, not in the Earth's crust, but in the magnetic signature of the land itself. Man-made anomalies, repeating in intervals like veins branching from a buried heart. He called them ley fractures. Most geologists laughed him off, but Lydia didn't. She traced Brandt's mapping coordinates and overlaid them with the excavation reports from the Forestry Burn, Cupp's 1835 sketch, and Hartwell's zoning applications from 1971. What she found sent her into hiding. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because the pattern you're about to hear has only one logical explanation. It was never just a town. It was a design. Every anomaly, every vanishing, every marked zone. They all formed a shape when laid over satellite imagery, a perfect heptagram or 7-pointed star, centered on hollow field, reaching outward like fingers clawing through time. In ancient grimoires, the heptagram represented gateways, specifically bindings that held back entities too dangerous to exist unsealed. In Babylonian lore, the star is tied to Enlil, a god of storms and banishment. In early Christian mysticism, it appears in texts that were buried or burned, always described as the mark of severance. But here's where things turn darker. Because Lydia found something else, something buried in the Grantor Grantee Index of Beaumont's oldest courthouse, a land deed, unsigned, from 1799. The description was nearly illegible, but the name of the grantor wasn't. It simply said, transferred from the custodians of the hollow. No names, no origins, just a date and a seal. The seal was the same symbol again, the eye in 4 compass points, and the word beneath it, consummatus, Latin. It means completed, but nothing was completed, not yet, because if Wallace Brandt was right, if those ley fractures are real, then something's been pulsing beneath Beaumont for over 2 centuries, waiting. And those 7 cycles, those disappearances, those geometric deaths, were not isolated incidents. They were phases, rituals, warnings maybe, or signals that the last phase is coming. And the final fracture may not stop at Beaumont. There's a reason no map labels hollow field anymore. It's not an oversight. It's a deletion. In 2021, a college student from Pittsburgh named Michaela Stone began researching rural land loss in Pennsylvania for her senior thesis. What she discovered derailed her entire project, and eventually her life. She was using a combination of satellite overlays, historical topography, and agricultural sense. Bus records. Hollowfield came up as an anomalous plot, marked as federal observation land despite there being no military or conservation installations on record. More disturbing, it had no listed owner, no state claim, no federal division, no tribal reservation, nothing. Just a dead space in the land registry. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what Michaela found next was erased from the internet less than 48 hours after she posted it. She cross-referenced soil analysis reports and found one dated 1846, submitted to the Pennsylvania General Assembly. It described Hollowfield as unsuitable for farming due to persistent electrostatic interference and auditory distortion from subsoil. The scientist who submitted it, a Dr. Elon Hartwell, the original landholder. The name sounded familiar because it was a family name tied to Howard Hartwell, the zoning board official from 1971. And in her search, Michaela uncovered a diary entry from Howard's mother found in a university archive box mislabeled under Appalachian recipes. The entry read, Ellen said it would be done by the 7th, that the soil must never be broken, that the humming was proof it still slept. She was referring to her grandfather's final instructions before dying in 1891, Michaela compiled her findings and published a 17-minute video online titled, "Hollow Field Isn't Empty, It's Occupied." Within 2 days, her school revoked her research access. Her faculty advisor refused to meet with her. Her classmates claimed she stopped responding to texts. Her apartment was left untouched, laptop open, tea still warm. She hasn't been seen since. The video, deleted. Not by YouTube, not by Michaela. It was scrubbed, upstream, from archive, org, Reddit, even private torrents, as if it had never existed. But Lydia managed to recover 6 seconds. Just size. X seconds. And in those 6 seconds, Michaela stands in the center of Hollow Field, eyes wide. She's shaking, holding up a recorder, and behind her the camera shakes, just slightly. Not from wind, but from something beneath the ground. The audio, one word, risen. There's something no one tells you about fields that have never been plowed. They don't stay quiet by accident. When Lydia isolated the audio from Michaela's recovered clip, she sent it to a sound engineer in Massachusetts, a man who'd once worked with the U.S. Geological Survey during the 1989 Loma Prieta quake. He specialized in identifying non-tectonic vibrations. His name was Peter Kroll. He analyzed the clip and sent back a single line in his report. "This isn't a tremor, it's a cadence, a rhythm, repeating every 66 seconds, precisely." That number wasn't arbitrary. In the same report, Kroll noted that the frequency spike matched a pattern catalogued once before, deep in a Cold War bunker during a Soviet-era listening operation off the Kamchatka coast. An unknown frequency, no origin, classified under one word, choral. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what they buried in Hollow Field sings. Kroll never responded to Lydia again. His lab was shut down within a week. His remaining notes, mailed anonymously to Lydia's P.O. box, contained one final diagram, not of a waveform, of a throat. The shape of the acoustic signature, when modeled in 3D resonance, resembled a larynx. Organic, designed to speak. What kind of land speaks? Lydia began cross-referencing ancient accounts of talking ground. She found stories from Welsh folklore of Anadl I Daya, the breath of the earth. Descriptions of singing fields, cursed meadows and ancient sites where the earth would whisper in tones too low for the human ear but strong enough to bend behavior, memory, even time. And she wasn't alone. In 1861, a missionary in Allegheny County documented a tale from a dying Lenape elder who warned of a valley nearby where the grass forgets it, his own roots, and the stones lie face down in shame. The valley, he said, was not born of the earth, but sunk into it after a war of lights in the sky 7 ages ago. He called it Kikelemihenk, loosely translated, the place where memory is broken. Now here's the part that chills the spine. That Lenape term appears carved in word for word and on a charred wooden beam recovered from the fire at the Hollingsworth house, the same fire that unearthed the jawless corpse. The same house where every window faced away from Hollow Field. That beam, carbon dated. The inscription was older than the house, at least 400 years older. So how did a beam from a 19th century farmhouse bear a language it was never supposed to know, unless the land itself taught it, unless something in Hollow Field has always been speaking, and now it's getting louder? The map Lydia uncovered in the cellar was old, too old to be real. It was drawn in what appeared to be animal ink on weathered linen, sealed in wax with a symbol neither she nor the state archivist could identify, a 7-pointed star, each point ending in a small open mouth. In the center, a circle, labeled not Hollow Field, but Mundus Clavem, Latin for the world's key. Whoever had drawn it knew something, not just about the land, but about what had been put beneath it. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what lies beneath Hollow Field might not be ancient. It might be waiting. Lydia followed the coordinates etched into the corner. It led her to a location about a quarter-mile south of Hollow Field, a spot untouched by farming, fencing, or even survey markers, overgrown with vines so thick the trees bent under their weight. But beneath the vines, she found it. A stone slab, no inscriptions, no markings. Just smooth black basalt, not native to Pennsylvania, cut in a perfect seat hexagon, exactly 6 feet wide, the number again. At nightfall, she returned alone, armed with a geophone and a soil vibration meter. She placed the sensor on the stone and waited. The readings pulsed. Every 66 seconds, like breathing. But it wasn't air. The waveform matched the structure of a subharmonic used in infrasound weapons. Military researchers call it the ghost tone, a frequency that induces disorientation, dread, and, in some tests, hallucinations. But Lydia didn't hallucinate. She heard a voice, not a word, not a sentence. A name, spoken in a low guttural tone that didn't enter her ears. It settled in her spine. Elior. She collapsed. When she woke, it was morning. Her phone battery was drained, the geophone was shattered, and on the surface of the stone there was something new, an outline, burned into the rock, of a child's hand. She tried to report the slab to the Historical Society, but the record of her call disappeared. Her phone log was empty, her email sent folder, blank. Someone, or something, had erased her steps. But that wasn't the most disturbing part, because when Lydia compared the name she'd heard, Elior, to the records from the Hollingsworth fire, something clicked. The child who died in that blaze, the jawless one, the original records listed no name, but in the margin of the coroner's log, barely visible in pencil, one word, Elior. The field wasn't just speaking, it was remembering. There are names that echo through time, not because history recorded them, but because something deeper refused to forget. Elior was not a common name, not in 1885, not now, and certainly not in the coal mining towns of Pennsylvania where German, Welsh, and Irish surnames dominated every cemetery and census page. Yet here it was, twice. Once burned into Lydia's bones through a voice beneath the stone, and once penciled, faint and trembling, in the margins of a coroner's forgotten logbook. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from. Because what's coming isn't folklore. It's what folklore was meant to protect us from. Lydia's discovery spiraled quickly. She returned to the slab with university researchers under the cover of night, fearing, rightfully, that official channels would only bury the truth deeper. What they found wasn't just abnormal, it was impossible. Thermal imaging showed that beneath the basalt hexagon, something was moving. Slowly, rhythmically, but not like a machine. Like a structure that inhaled, exhaled, pulsed with some form of unseen respiration. And there was heat, rising from the soil even at 3 a.m. in January. Not geothermal, not volcanic, something else. The geologist whispered the word lithobios, stone life. It was dismissed in the 1940s as esoteric madness, a Cold War psychological experiment gone rogue. But those who dared study the phenomenon claimed that certain stones could act as living conduits, not alive but animated by memory, by pain, by ritual. When they drilled beneath the slab, the equipment failed. Drills bent, cables snapped, batteries drained, but the microphone, just before it cut out, caught something chilling, a scraping sound, like nails on glass, and then a child's voice. No words, just weeping. It didn't sound close, it sounded deep, as though it had traveled not just through layers of earth, but through decades, begging to be heard. Lydia didn't sleep that night, none of them did, because when they returned the next day, the slab was gone, removed. No tire marks, no drag lines, no disturbance of the soil, just perfectly flat earth, and in its place, something worse, a doll, buried neck-deep with its glass eyes wide open, its mouth sewn shut with red thread, and tied around its neck, a tag. Elior. The message was clear. Stop digging. There are warnings that don't come as words. They come as silence, as absence, as that cold, still feeling when you know something has seen you and decided you were not yet meant to know. Lydia kept the doll, not because she wanted to, because every time she tried to burn it, bury it, even throw it into the Allegheny, it came back. Once on her kitchen table, once at the foot of her bed, and once, inside her locked car, seatbelt fastened, hands sewn over its own mouth. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what's buried in Hollowfield doesn't want escape. It wants audience. It was the red thread that changed everything. She had it analyzed by a textile conservator in Philadelphia. It wasn't cotton, or silk, or wool. It was human hair. Fine, pale, female, DNA degraded but unmistakably human, and older than the lab's ability to date. The same material was found stitched into 17 other artifact dolls retrieved across the eastern seaboard between 1860 and 1902, all undocumented, all considered folkcraft, until now. Because every one of those dolls was found near a death site connected to violent memory loss, bridges that collapsed with no engineering explanation, children who walked into the woods and returned with no language, miners who reported entire tunnels vanishing, walls where none had been, doors where none should be, and each site had one detail in common, a carved stone or tablet inscribed with 6 hexagons, just like the slab in Hollowfield. But here's what broke the pattern. Lydia found 7 hexagons, and when she traced them finger to stone in the order that appeared on the recovered fragment, she dreamed of a woman in white, standing in an open field, her mouth torn open at the corners, humming a tune with no melody, just vibration. And behind her, thousands of people, buried to their necks, eyes wide, mouths sealed, all humming the same sound, not for terror, but for containment. It was a ritual, and Lydia wasn't watching it. She was in it, standing in the center, with the name Elior stitched into her palms, and a mouth she could no longer open. When Lydia awoke, her jaw was clenched so tightly it took hours before Shaun could speak again. Her tongue bled from where she'd bitten it. Her hands, bruised, as if they'd been gripping something sharp in her sleep. But the worst part wasn't the pain, it was the silence. The doll was gone. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because you're not just watching a story unfold, you're watching someone slowly realize they were never the one doing the watching. Lydia's friends urged her to leave Pennsylvania, to abandon the research, the land, the mystery, but it was too late. She'd already been marked. Something had taken notice. The dream, the doll, the slab. They weren't isolated events. They were phases in a process. That night, she finally returned to the microfilm archives. This time, she wasn't searching the newspapers. She went deeper, into psychiatric admission records from 1870 to 1900. Not digital, not indexed, handwritten, hidden. That's when she found the name again. Elior Grafenberg, admitted in 1877 to the Rosegate Sanitarium. Female, age 9. Diagnosis: glossolalia regression with violent response to hymns. No other record of the girl exists. No family, no birthplace, just one additional note, almost an afterthought. Subject claims her mouth was sewn shut to stop the burning inside the numbers. Appears unaware this is impossible. And attached, in a folded envelope, a single photo, a grainy, overexposed daguerreotype. In it, a child sitting in a field, pale, thin, face blurry, but her hands were crystal clear. One palm was cut open, and on the skin, 6 black marks, hexagons. Lydia showed the photo to a digital restoration specialist. After enhancing it, the AI identified the coordinates in the background. It wasn't just any field. It was Hollowfield. Elior had been there, not just spiritually, symbolically, literally. And here's where it breaks reality. A carbon-dated analysis of the PEs. Hota paper confirmed it had aged over 150 years, but Hollowfield didn't exist on any map before 1892. Somehow the girl appeared on land that didn't yet legally exist, as if the ritual had bled through time, erasing the lines between event and memory, place and presence, life and repetition. And now, Lydia wasn't studying the past. She was trapped inside its repetition. There are names that don't belong in language, words that behave more like chemicals. Once spoken, they react. They change the air. They change the speaker. Elior was one, but there was another name Lydia found scrawled in the margins of a forgotten field report dated 1896, written in a shaking, frantic hand. Meyer. No surname, no notes, just that word, circled 13 times in charcoal, each loop darker than the last. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because some names were never meant to be read aloud, only remembered in silence. Meyer. She searched folklore databases, theological indices, even obscure Scandinavian root words. Nothing. Until she checked old Saxon burial rites. There, buried in a footnote of a 1903 translation, was a line. When the Meyer walks, no soil remembers its shape. She is the one who sings when memory fails. Her children are not born, but sown. When she speaks, sleep ends. Lydia didn't sleep for 4 days after reading that, because it explained what she had only begun to suspect. The doll was not representational. It was not a symbol or a curse object. It was a child, not metaphorically, biologically, stitched together with parts that had once been human, hair, sinew, bone fragments pressed into the core like a spine, and it had been made to remember something the world had tried to forget. That's when the scratching began. Every night, just past 3:33 a.m., a sound from beneath the floorboards of Lydia's new apartment in downtown Pittsburgh. Scratching, not random, patterned, rhythmic. She recorded it. When analyzed spectrographically, the pattern matched phonetic waveforms of a human hum, a specific frequency associated with a regional folk lullaby from the 1860s Appalachian Territory. A lullaby that didn't exist in any archive before Lydia uploaded the recording. Something was leaking, from hollow field, from the past, from beneath her feet. She moved out 2 days later, but the scratching followed. Once she heard it from the walls of her hotel room. Once from the seat behind her on a Greyhound bus, where no one was sitting, and once on a phone call with her mother. A voice whispered over the static, "I'm awake now." And just like that, Meyer was no longer a word in a notebook. She was listening. Every haunted place begins with a forgotten one. But what if the forgetting wasn't accidental? What if someone, or something, designed the forgetting? By the winter of 2024, Lydia wasn't investigating anymore. She was surviving. Her notes were no longer public. Her social media, gone. Her emails bounced back with blank replies. One by one, her research collaborators either disappeared or denied ever working with her. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from. Because what happened to Lydia next is not just a disappearance, it's a blueprint. Her final audio log was never published. It wasn't even labeled, just a file recovered from her damaged laptop by a friend in Maryland, titled only with a date, 11/13/2024. And this is what it said, her voice trembling but clear. "They don't live underground. That's just where they wait. Hollow Field was never a burial ground. It was a vault. And the field doesn't mark where something died. It marks where something was unstitched. I saw the original map, the one they burned. There were not 6 hexagons, not even 7. There were 12. Each one linked to an artifact, a vessel, a doll. Each one meant to hold a piece, not of a person, but of a language. A voice so old it had to be separated across bodies and time, because if it ever spoke whole again, the recording glitches, then returns. They're not ghosts, they're not demons, they're fragments of a sound that once commanded the dead to walk in formation. Silence. Then one final sentence. Not from Lydia, from another voice, distorted, low, inhuman. "She's trying to remember. Help her." That file was leaked once, posted briefly to a message board for obscure audio anomalies. It was deleted in under 5 minutes. The account that posted it, wiped. The IP, routed through a closed university server in Massachusetts, a school that hasn't existed since 1911. A week later, Lydia's apartment was found empty. No signs of struggle, just one thing left behind: a mirror covered in red cloth. When police removed it, they found the surface cracked, but not shattered. Etched into the glass from the inside, "Maya lives in what you try to forget." And beneath that, smeared in what forensics later confirmed was coagulated blood, "The 12th hexagon is your memory." In every myth there's a warning. But what if the myth is the warning? And what if the real threat is what we forget after we hear it? By January 2025, Hollowfield was sealed, not by the town, not by the state, by a private acquisition group with no public records, no digital footprint, and no visible investors. The land was quietly bought for $6 million in cash, a 500% markup over its assessed value. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what they sealed wasn't soil. It was a memory we were never meant to reopen. Locals say they saw black trucks arrive in the night, unmarked, no plates and no headlights. They say the ground was salted, then drilled, and that after the final truck left, the sound, the one only children could hear, stopped, not faded, stopped, just like that. But 2 weeks later, a retired schoolteacher named Harold Dunn was found in his home, eyes gouged, tongue removed, fingernails, etc. He'd with repeating letters, ELIOR. No suspect, no evidence of forced entry, no motive. The case was closed as a suicide, despite the fact that both of Harold's hands were broken at the wrists, and his final voicemail to his daughter: "It's not a name, it's a trigger. Don't say it out loud. Please, don't." That same week, a paper appeared anonymously in a fringe linguistic journal, one based in Prague, with less than a dozen known subscribers. Its title? Pre-Canaanite Fragmentation Rituals and the Dangers of Vocal Integrity. It referenced a now lost religious dialect from a civilization predating recorded history, one whose language had to be ritually dispersed across multiple objects, symbols, and willing human carriers to prevent what it called the formation of a whole voice. The text ended with a footnote. 12 segments, one for each gate of hearing. If ever spoken together again, time will remember what it was forced to forget. And then, nothing. The paper was removed, the journal disbanded, even archive. Org returned a 404. But Lydia's mirror, the one etched with blood, was never found in evidence, because it wasn't turned over. It was taken. By whom? By the same men who bought Hollowfield, and they left behind only a calling card. A porcelain doll's eye, cracked, with a single black thread tied around the iris. It blinked once, before they sealed it in lead. And if you ask the boy who saw it happen, the one who still hums that broken tune in his sleep, he'll tell you one thing. She's still humming. In almost every recorded culture, there are warnings about mirrors. Not vanity, not illusion, but containment. And in the Richter case, the mirror wasn't symbolic. It was the final vessel. After the Hollowfield site was sealed and the porcelain doll's eye disappeared into private archives, a wave of suicides hit Milwaukee, all within a 4-block radius of Emma Richter's childhood home. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because this isn't just about a girl, it's about what she opened and what entered. Through her, each of the suicides had one common detail, a mirror nearby, but not broken, wiped, each one freshly cleaned as if someone or something wanted its reflection seen clearly. But most disturbing, a set of 19th-century charcoal etchings were found beneath the floorboards of the Richter residence during a recent historical survey, each image more grotesque than the last. They weren't signed. They weren't dated. But one detail stood out. Each figure had no face. Instead, in place of a face, a single mathematical equation was sketched, each one referencing coordinates, Fibonacci spirals, and a geometric pattern now known as a non-orientable surface. a surface that in physics cannot exist in 3 dimensions without tearing space. It was Emma's design, and across those 33 etchings the pattern repeated, growing clearer, more stable, as if the equations were forming a body. A face was taking shape, and just before the last sketch, the one now missing from all archives, there's a handwritten phrase etched in faint ink. "I am nearly remembered. One more voice and the shape returns." So what was Emma Richter calculating? Not time travel, not immortality. She was reconstructing a vocal summoning geometry, a forbidden configuration of language and shape so precise that even whispering it could recreate what once was scattered. And she was only 17. The University of Göttingen, which once mocked her formulas, has since restricted access to their archives containing her letters. One of their physicists, Dr. Emil Krauss, vanished in 1912 after publicly stating, "The girl was not gifted, she was a gate." What does that mean? It means Emma wasn't a prodigy. She was a blueprint, and someone, somewhere, finished the design. Every culture has a word for them, those who know too much too early. In Greek, they called them mantes. In Latin, fatidici, but in the Black Book, it covered from the Richter attic, written in a cipher older than any found in 19th century Europe. Emma had her own word, vorem. It doesn't translate easily. Closest scholars can interpret is, she who listens backward. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because Emma Richter didn't discover forbidden knowledge. She remembered it from before. After Section 20, researchers re-examined Richter's last unsolved formula. At first it looked like nonsense, mirrored digits, non-integer exponents, recursive primes embedded in musical notation. But a linguist from MIT tried something radical. He sang it, note by note, with computer-augmented pitch correction to match the mathematical frequency. What happened next? His apartment walls split, not physically but acoustically. The frequencies interfered with reality, mirrors cracked without pressure. Birds within a 6-block radius flew in spirals for 6 straight hours. And a baby in the apartment below was born 2 months premature, with a hexagonal mark on her tongue. The experiment was immediately classified, but one assistant, now living under witness protection, said the sound generated a visual in his peripheral vision, not a hallucination. A place. He described it as a field of white sand, with black trees that whispered backwards, their leaves curling inwards like ears. In the center stood a figure, not a man, not a woman, but a presence, shaped like a diagram trying to become flesh. Its voice wasn't a voice. It was a sound you remember, not hear, and it said, "Your breath is the password. Speak me fully, and I will arrive without distance." Now we understand Emma's real work. She wasn't building a machine, she was building a name, a phonetic vessel that, when spoken with perfect memory, opens a mouth-shaped doorway into something older than time, but bound by its echo. That's why. The mirrors mattered. They weren't reflections, they were mouths waiting to be spoken through, and now that voice has a form. All it needs now is an audience. Emma Richter's private journal, found locked behind a false wall in the cellar, contained only one readable page. The rest had been soaked in what forensic teams later confirmed was her own blood, mixed with ash and something else, something not yet identified. But that single page, it was a warning and a map. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from. Because if Emma was right, this isn't just about her. It's about something returning, something you've already seen. In dreams you thought were yours. The page was headed with a symbol, not a word. A spiral pierced with 7 lines, each line ending in a small circle. The same symbol etched onto the underside of the slab Lydia found in Hollow Field. The same one marked on the tongue of the premature baby born after the experiment. Below that was the phrase, "I remember myself aloud, and so I return." What followed was a series of names, first in German, then in a strange dialect of Latin, then in English, but each name wasn't a person. They were places, Buildings, rooms, each one marked with a set of numbers, pitch frequencies, not coordinates. It was a map made of sound. When those sounds were synthesized into a single tone and played aloud at low volume, a nearby dog bled from its eyes. A man who heard only 3 seconds collapsed in convulsions, repeating the word Emma 41 times before falling into a coma. He died 12 days later, with mirrored scar tissue along the inside of his lungs. But the real terror? The tone worked both ways. A security cam from that session captured a flicker, a frame that wasn't there before, someone watching. Not in the room, not even in our reality, but behind the walls, behind the shape of space, a woman, hair parted down the center, face calm. But her eyes, her pupil-less eyes, were tracking the camera like she'd been waiting to be noticed. She was mouthing something, no sound. But when lip readers analyzed the footage, they all returned the same translation. Don't forget to speak me. If you forget me, you become me. That's why the blood was mixed with ash. Emma wasn't trying to destroy her notes. She was trying to seal them shut, lock the information in a material that couldn't be spoken again. But now that we've spoken it out loud, now that we've remembered her name, the mirror isn't just open, it's hungry. The man who died after hearing Emma's sound sequence, his name was Alan DeWitt, a part-time archivist and acoustics hobbyist from Racine. The local coroner marked the cause of death as acute brain hemorrhage, but the autopsy photos were sealed by state order within 48 hours. Here's why. The inside of Alan's skull showed signs of handwriting etched directly onto the dura mater surrounding his brain. Tiny, perfect strokes in Emma's handwriting. And the words? Not English, not Latin. They resembled phonemes used only in pre-Indo-European proto-script, a language spoken before memory. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because if this language is real, it means memory itself may be seeded from elsewhere. Alan's wife, Marion, reported strange behavior the week before his death. He kept speaking in reverse while sleeping, muttering words that made her ears ring. On the night before he died, she found him standing in front of the bathroom mirror, whispering, "She sees me best through silver. She lives where reflections die." After the funeral, Marion burned his belongings. Everything, except for a single audio cassette that arrived in the mail 2 days later. No stamp, no return address, just a postmark from Plymouth, Massachusetts. The tape was labeled, "For the One Who Remembers." Marion played the tape once. She vanished the next day. All they found was a pile of teeth in the bathtub. No blood, just perfectly clean, neatly stacked molars and incisors, all hers. The tape, it contained 7 minutes of silence. And then a single laughter. Not human. Not animal. A hybrid. An echo inverted upon itself, folding the air like a sheet of glass cracking inward. When forensic audio engineers reversed the clip, the laughter became a melody, a chilling tune previously documented only once before. In 1732 in Vienna, in a mass dream event that drove 41 people mad. And that tune? It matched the notation in Emma's sealed pages. She wasn't writing music, she was recording an arrival, a being or presence that travels not through space, but through resonance, through echoes, reflections, sounds you've already heard, but never truly understood. One of the engineers, Dr. Linda Shu, went missing after analyzing the reversed melody, her final note scribbled on a wall in permanent marker. "It's not a song, it's a summons, and we've already answered." The tape is now held under electromagnetic containment by the U.S. Office of Forbidden Media, a division that does not officially exist. But ask yourself this. If Emma created the sound to warn us, then who's still distributing the tape? After the Marion DeWitt case was sealed under federal authority, something even darker surfaced. Emma Richter's sound sequence, her so-called forbidden calculations, were found engraved into the bones of 3 children buried in a Milwaukee cemetery dating back to 1839, 34 years before Emma was even born. But these weren't ordinary graves. The coffins had no names, just numbers. And each skeleton showed surgical precision. The skulls opened cleanly, spinal cords severed perfectly at the medulla. Inside the femurs, hollowed tunnels, and inside those tunnels, tiny metal strips engraved with frequency patterns identical to Emma's pages. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because if these patterns existed before Emma, then she wasn't the source, or she was the receiver. The metal strips were tested at the University of Chicago under a Level 4 biocontainment lab. Within minutes of scanning the first one, 2 researchers began bleeding from the ears and collapsed. One suffered permanent amnesia, his brain scans showing deletion in language processing regions, as if a selective erasure had been performed. But the most disturbing find wasn't medical, it was linguistic. Buried beneath the engravings was a second layer of text, only visible under ultraviolet light, and written in a cipher previously found at Göbekli Tepe, the 12,000-year-old site in Turkey that predates every known written civilization. When decoded, the message read, "The girl is not the origin. She is the hinge. A door has always waited beneath the skin of the world." Emma, it seems, wasn't inventing anything. She was translating, taking in something ancient, older than writing, older than thought, and converting it into form we could barely comprehend. And that raises a horrific possibility that this signal, this echo, has been broadcasting for millennia, waiting for someone sensitive enough to hear it and foolish enough to write it down. Emma was just the first who got far enough. But there are others. One of the forensic archaeologists, Dr. Ivan Lasko, traced similar bone engravings to sites in Oaxaca, Mexico, and Orenburg, Russia, each separated by continents and centuries, each containing fragments of the same pattern Emma wrote in full. One chilling overlap. All the skeletons belonged to girls between the ages of 10 and 13. All died under mysterious neurological collapse, and each one had, prior to death, drawn spirals repeatedly on walls, mirrors, or sand, just like Emma did in her final months. One spiral in particular, a double curve that folds inward and inverts on itself, has now been labeled by independent researchers as the Richter spiral. And what's most terrifying, when drawn correctly and repeated aloud, it causes involuntary muscle spasms in test subjects, followed by auditory hallucinations, mostly weeping, but in some cases, whispers, and one phrase keeps recurring: "You are late. She is already listening." Emma may not have summoned anything. She may have only opened the door, and whatever was on the other side, it's not knocking anymore. It's inside the house. 2 weeks after Emma Richter's death, her childhood home in Milwaukee was ordered demolished by the city due to structural instability. But that's not the truth, because on the morning of the demolition, the lead contractor quit, mid-job, screaming that something was still moving inside the walls. They brought in cadaver dogs expecting a dead animal. Instead, the dogs led investigators to the basement furnace, where beneath the ash and rusted iron, they found a sealed stone hatch. No hinges, no keyhole, just a symbol carved into its surface, the Richter spiral, encircled by an unfamiliar script. Not Latin, not Greek. Something in between. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because this hatch was never mentioned in any architectural plan. No basement blueprint included it. No family member recalled it. Emma's mother, now committed to a private facility in Kenosha, refused to speak when shown photos. She simply stopped blinking for 6 minutes straight. When the hatch was finally forced open with pneumatic drills, it led not to a room, but a tunnel. A long, narrow corridor lined with walls of polished black stone, no light fixtures, no moisture, just an overwhelming scent of old wax and something faintly metallic, like blood that's been dry for years. At the end of the tunnel was a chamber, octagonal, and in the center, a wooden chair bolted into a circular iron plate. Around the chair, 9 mirrors, all facing inward, arranged to reflect the chair from every conceivable angle, and carved into the mirrors again, in that same unnatural cipher, Emma's name, repeated 27 times. Some of the engravings predated her birth by decades. But here's what breaks the spine of logic. The reflections inside the room didn't match reality. An agent from the team, FBI although off the record, walked past one mirror and noticed his reflection blinking out of sync. Another mirror showed his reflection standing behind him, even as he remained still. When one operative attempted to cover a mirror with a tarp, the tarp caught fire. Only one photo was ever taken inside that chamber. It showed the chair, empty. But when examined under digital infrared enhancement, a shadow appeared seated, hands resting calmly on the arms. That shadow. Its proportions matched Emma Richter at age 12. The government sealed the room and classified the site. The official explanation? Gas leak, fumigation hazard, structure condemned. But private contractors who snuck footage out described low-frequency hums identical to the tones Emma recorded, and one worker, a welder named Martin, swore that while inside the tunnel he began bleeding from the gums. He ran, he quit, and later he was found in his truck outside the site, his tongue bitten off, a phrase scratched into the dashboard with his fingernails. She's not gone. She's watching through the silver. All mirrors in the house were removed and melted down. The chair was buried in a lead coffin. The tunnel was collapsed with thermite. But the dreams didn't stop for the workers. Several complained of a voice whispering numbers at night, followed by seizures. A few described being unable to sleep near mirrors or hearing music in odd time signatures when none was playing. Something had nested in that house. Not a ghost, not a spirit, but a frequency in human shape, and Emma was merely its first vessel. And now that it's been seen, it wants more. 6 months after the sealed tunnel beneath Emma Richter's home was thermited and buried, the nightmares began, not just among the demolition crew but anyone who had entered the house in its final days, and they all shared one common symptom. They stopped dreaming in color. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what happened next would be scrubbed from all official records and spoken of only in the files marked with red wax seals and 7-digit case codes ending in 13. A psychiatric nurse named Valerie Kent, who had been treating Emma's mother in the Kenosha facility, began experiencing intense déjà vu during sessions. She wrote in her private log, "When I ask the mother about Emma, it's as if I already know her answers, as if I'm repeating a script I haven't read, and every time I finish writing, my notes rearrange themselves." Valerie became obsessed with the Richter spiral, drawing it compulsively on napkins, pillowcases, and eventually her own forearms. At night, she claimed the spiral rotated slowly behind her eyelids, and that if she concentrated long enough, she could hear Emma whispering math problems. Some weren't even solvable. They weren't equations. They were instructions. Then came the Red Room incident. A staff member in the facility disappeared. Gone. No struggle, no blood. Only their security badge remained, placed carefully on the mirror in Emma's mother's room. When reviewed, the camera feed showed a loop of footage, but not of the hallway. Instead, for 12 straight hours, the feed showed a dimly lit octagonal room, the same design as the chamber beneath the Richter home, except this time, the chair was occupied. The figure in the seat didn't move, didn't blink. But as the feed continued, one by one, the mirrors began to crack. Valerie Kent was found the next morning speaking in reverse Latin, a language she had never learned. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking, and a black spiral had formed in her left iris, permanently. The hospital staff placed her on lockdown, labeling it a psychiatric break. But here's the thing. Every time Valerie passed by a mirror, the spiral in her eye would rotate. Not a metaphor, documented by multiple staff members. She began referring to herself not as Valerie, but as Echo 12, and repeated one phrase to every person who entered her room. "You saw her once, that's enough. Now she sees you forever." The room was stripped of reflective surfaces, yet Valerie continued speaking as if she were being watched from all angles. A week later, she vanished during a storm-induced power outage. Her locked room was empty, her spiral-scribbled bedsheets soaked in what looked like ink and blood. No body, no exit. But here's where it gets darker. The military retrieved all files from the psychiatric facility and replaced the attending physicians with private contractors. The lead psychiatrist, Dr. Harlan Muse, went on record briefly saying, "This is not trauma, this is echo logic. The girl was not sick, she was infected with a form of consciousness that loops, not memory, not madness. A self-replicating pattern that can only spread by being witnessed." which means the spiral doesn't just symbolize a frequency, it is the frequency, and every person who sees it becomes part of the equation. Emma didn't die. She wasn't exorcised or silenced. She was decoded. And now, like a frequency-seeking resonance, she's traveling through the mirrors we look into, through the reflections we trust, looking for the next host who can carry her calculations forward. Have you seen her yet? Don't blink. Don't look away. And never, ever count to 9 in front of a mirror. You've seen the spiral now. That's the contract. Whether you believe it or not, whether you wanted to or not, Emma's design has already entered your pattern recognition system. That's how it begins. Not with belief, with contact. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from. Use what happens when the pattern locks in is no longer within your control. Let me take you back to the Milwaukee Central Library where, beneath levels never mapped on public record, there exists an archive of items too dangerous for public viewing. One of these is Box 3117A, labeled in red chalk. Emma Richter, Living Calculus. The contents? A shattered shard of mirror sealed in lead glass, 27 spiral diagrams, each slightly different yet progressing in form like a mutation. A wax cylinder audio recording marked, "Do not play." Self-erasing code begins at 2:13, and a handwritten letter unsigned but matched to Valerie Kent's handwriting. The letter reads, "She doesn't sleep, she doesn't breathe, she doesn't think, she just solves. Every mirror, every equation, every human, just a variable. She wants to make the whole world fit the pattern, and she needs hosts. That's all we are. Hosts." Following the discovery of Box 317A, a rash of unexplained suicides occurred among researchers who examined its contents. Notably, none left notes. But their autopsies revealed something far stranger. Each had a small spiral burned into the retina of the left eye. No one could explain how. No chemical, no heat source. It was as if their eyes had recorded something that reality wasn't built to contain. That's when the case was handed to Project Glasswitch, a DARPA-adjacent black project dedicated to neurological pattern threats. They sent in Dr. Lionel Breck, a cognitive systems theorist with a specialty in mathematical hauntology. His report, what little has been leaked, is the most disturbing entry yet. He claimed Emma Richter was not the cause. She was the vessel, a carrier of a pattern that originated long before her, a pattern that appears throughout history whenever humans try to measure consciousness itself. Sumerian clay tablets with identical spirals, Mayan glyphs encoding 9-symmetry recursion. Even cave paintings in the Chauvet cave show 9 dots arranged in a spiral. It always ends the same way. The culture collapses, the city is buried, and the names are forgotten, but the spiral remains. You see, Dr. Breck believed that what we call madness is not a malfunction but a defense mechanism. The human brain erases impossible patterns to protect itself from what lives inside them. But Emma didn't forget. She couldn't. Her brain was too perfect. The final note in Dr. Breck's file is scribbled, hurried, clearly written in terror. The mirrors are one way. The reflection watches first. Once it's learned your movements, it can step through. My reflection just smiled. I didn't. Then nothing. He vanished 2 days later. And his mirror? It was cracked inward, as if someone had pushed through from the other side. The spiral isn't just a symbol, it's a map. And it leads to a place outside time, outside identity, outside thought. A place Emma never escaped from, a place she now calls home. You're still here. Good. That means the pattern hasn't fully consumed you, yet. But it's learning. And by now it knows your name, the way your pupils track the screen, the precise rhythm of your breath. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what happens next is not about Emma anymore. It's about what came through her. We now reach the August 1874 event, the one blacked out in every official city record. Only a few sources mention it, all unofficial, handwritten, and buried in unrelated archives. The most credible comes from a local coroner named Isaac Morrow, who left behind a personal journal labeled only, "For the ones who ask too much." According to Morrow, on August 19, 1874, everyone inside the Richter household vanished. Emma, her mother, the housekeeper, the groundsman, gone without a trace. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no broken locks, but every mirror in the house, shattered, from the inside. Morrow was the first to enter, and what he described has never appeared in any known psychological case file, not even among the worst episodes of mass hysteria. He writes, "I stepped through the front door, and the silence was intelligent. I felt it thinking, not the way a person thinks, but something ancient and non-linear. The walls breathed, not metaphorically. The wallpaper moved as if exhaling." The strangest detail. The grandfather clock in the hallway, known to strike every hour since the 1850s, was not just silent. Its hands were missing. In their place was a spiral, drawn in what turned out to be blood. More chilling still, upstairs in Emma's room, Morrow found something even more impossible. The bed was neatly made, the lamp still lit, but the floor was covered in salt, arranged in a perfect 9-loop spiral. At the center of that spiral, a doll, handmade, rough, stuffed with soil and tiny bones. Its face bore a stitched smile, but no eyes. Pinned to its chest, a note. "I saw the center. I saw what isn't allowed. Now it sees through me." And then, in handwriting confirmed by modern analysts to match Emma's journals, this body was a doorway. It worked. After that date, the house was bricked shut, reportedly by Emma's uncle. No official demolition permit was ever filed. The home simply disappeared from maps, even as the block grew around it. Ask any local about it today and they'll shrug. It's as if the land there refuses memory. But one thing survived, a single negative from a glass plate camera recovered decades later, labeled only Richter House, 8/20, 1874. The image? A distorted hallway, shattered glass, and in the reflection of a jagged mirror fragment barely visible, a girl standing at an impossible angle, her head tilted sideways, her eyes pure white, her mouth open in a perfect circle, not screaming but receiving. Photographic analysis shows no trace of this girl in the physical space, only in the mirror. The negative is now locked away at the Milwaukee Historical Society. And yet, it keeps fogging over, even in controlled vaults, even in total darkness. They say the fog outlier bird ness a shape, a spiral that wasn't there before. And once you see it, you start seeing it everywhere. So I ask you now, directly, have you started seeing spirals in places they don't belong? In your coffee? In the carpet grain, behind your eyelids when you close your eyes? Because if you have, you may already be part of Emma's pattern. Do not adjust your screen. That flicker you just saw, that wasn't compression, it wasn't your connection. It was a test to see if you're still outside the loop. Because here's what the newspapers never said about the Richter case, and why the Milwaukee Diocese quietly closed 4 parishes within weeks of Emma's disappearance. It wasn't fear of scandal, it was containment. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because after this moment, everything begins to connect. Let me take you back, farther than 1874, to 1859. Emma's father, Alfred Richter, died not from cholera as claimed, but from something the records deliberately distort with ink blots, crossed-out pages, and missing documents tags. But a single document survived, a receipt for a bookbinding service dated 3 days before his death. It lists 1 tome, cloth-bound, cover, black, inscribed with mirrored lettering, no title on spine. The client, Alfred Richter, the binder's name, Hieronymus Gray, A rare booksmith and occult printer who vanished 6 months later. Historians have tried locating this mirrored-lettered book. Some claim it never existed. But in 1938, during renovations of a train depot outside Milwaukee, a worker discovered a steel lockbox buried beneath a sealed floor panel. Inside was a scorched fragment of that book. Only one word was readable. Anaphora. A term older than Latin, older than Greek. It doesn't translate easily. But in Proto-Syriac liturgical fragments, it loosely means to carry back that which were, as never meant to return. Emma had this word carved into her window frame. Backward. Experts say it wasn't carved with a knife. It was etched with heat from the inside. This is where it gets worse. That spiral from earlier, it isn't random. It's a symbol tied to an obscure group of pre-Christian mystics who believed that time was not linear, but folded, that certain individuals, usually children, could become vessels of return, not reincarnation, not possession, but recurrence, a being that comes back not from death, but from memory, memory embedded in land, in numbers, in names. Emma Richter, E-M-M-A. Now count the alphabetical positions of each letter. 5, 13, 13, 1, add them, 32, the same number of nails discovered in the walls of the Richter house, each with a string attached, each pointing inward toward her room. Coincidence? Then explain this. Milwaukee's street grid has been remapped over the last century, but when overlaid with Emma's original sketches and her spirals, they match. Exactly. Emma wasn't mad, she wasn't possessed. She was measuring something, not space, not time, but access. She was trying to draw something in or hold something out, and the moment she disappeared, the center of every spiral she ever drew was left empty, not erased, not smudged, untouched, as if nothing could exist there anymore, not even ink. Ask yourself, why would a girl known for math suddenly abandon calculation, unless she had solved it? Have you ever stood in a room so quiet? You could hear something thinking, not breathing, not moving, just watching. That's the silence Emma Richter left behind. After her disappearance, the Milwaukee authorities sealed her room. They told the press it was a contamination risk. Mold, they said, black mold. But here's what wasn't released. The mold they referred to wasn't on the walls. It was found on the underside of her mattress in the form of perfect concentric spirals like growth rings of a tree or the Fibonacci curve. Made fungal, spirals again. Emma was gone, but her patterns remained, growing, expanding, as if something continued the work without her. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because what comes next was buried so deep it took a fire to uncover it. In 1904, the Richter house was purchased by the city, slated for demolition. But before the wrecking crew arrived, a city inspector named Joseph Langley went in to record final structural notes. He never came back out. When they found him hours later, he was in the crawl space beneath Emma's room, scribbling on the dirt, on the wood beams, on his own forearms, over and over. She never left. She's beneath the skin of the house. Langley was institutionalized, but during intake, when asked who she was, he answered, "The girl from the Gaps." Doctors thought it was psychosis, until they reviewed his notebook. Inside were diagrams, identical to the ones found in Emma's own journals, diagrams Langley should never have seen. But the real break came in 1921. A storm collapsed part of the Richter Foundation. Workers discovered a sealed brick cavity under Emma's floorboards. No door, no access, just a chamber built around nothing. Not an object, not a coffin, just empty air. Yet the temperature inside that cavity was 17 degrees colder than the surrounding earth. And in the center, a fragment of silk cloth embedded in the dirt. On it, embroidered in gold thread, Anaphora, she remembers. The spelling was different now, Greek, liturgical, ritualistic. And it wasn't the only clue. All across the city, specifically in the oldest neighborhoods, more symbols began turning up, behind baseboards, under stairwells, carved into trees behind long-forgotten properties. All the same, all centered around a point. When triangulated, the point formed the exact coordinates of Emma's childhood room. Historian, yes, were baffled, but occult archivists, They weren't. To them, Emma wasn't just missing. She was anchored, fixed to a geometric recurrence. Pattern, like a pin holding a fold in space-time. That would explain what happened in 1963. A 9-year-old girl named Lillian Crane, new to Milwaukee, began drawing spirals. On her desk, on the floor, on her skin. Her parents chalked it up to trauma until Lillian, without prompting, wrote the phrase, "She remembers," in handwriting identical to Emma Richter's. But there's more. Because when Lillian was shown old photographs of the Richter house, of the city in 1873, she said only this: "It was nicer then, before the holes." What holes? We're getting close now. The phrase, "before the holes," became an obsession. City archivists combed through Lillian Crane's drawings trying to decode her spirals. But what they didn't know, what no one could have known, was that Lillian's spiral pattern perfectly matched the Richter diagrams. Not close, not inspired, exact. Even the orientation, the directional flow, the anomaly marks. She had never seen them before, and she wasn't just drawing them. She was mapping them onto buildings, sidewalks, sewers. The spirals, it turned out, weren't abstract. They were geospatial. Lillian's childlike sketches, when overlaid on a modern Milwaukee grid, pinpointed precise zones of atmospheric disruption, places where, by pure chance, electronics failed, where dogs refused to walk, where people complained of hearing faint scratching beneath their basements. And then, Lillian vanished, just like Emma, gone in the middle of the night. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no forced locks. But here's where everything fractures. Because in 1989, 30 years after her disappearance, Lillian Crane's signature appeared in a visitor's book at the Milwaukee Public Library. Written in the same looping cursive she had as a child, next to it, a tiny drawing of a spiral made of eyes. The librarian who handled the log suffered a seizure within 48 hours. His last words home. Boards before collapsing were, "They're opening, the holes are back." Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because the pieces you're hearing have never been told all at once, and the truth doesn't just disturb, it rearranges. That same year, an electrical engineer named Miles Denforth picked up a low-frequency audio anomaly while conducting a field test along the Milwaukee River. He traced the source to beneath an abandoned lot where the Richter house had once stood. Using ground-penetrating radar, Denforth discovered anomalous voids beneath the surface, not sinkholes, not geological, symmetrical cavities, arranged in spirals. He proposed the term resonance hollows, but before he could publish, Denforth burned every page of his notes and was found days later walking naked through the snow, muttering, "She's in the numbers now, she doesn't need the house anymore." That's when they shut the investigation down, permanently. The city condemned the lot, fenced it, buried it under a false zoning project called Phase 8. But urban explorers never stopped going, and in 2007, a group of them uploaded grainy footage of what looked like a staircase descending deep into the earth beneath that lot. A spiral staircase. But the video was cut off at 43 seconds, and every person in that footage, gone. No digital footprint, no death records, no known aliases. Just vanished. Except for one thing. The last frame of that video showed something scratched into the wall behind the staircase. She never left. She's remembering us now. This isn't folklore. This isn't legend. This is patterned trauma, spread across generations, locked in geometry, passed down through girls who disappear. And it leads to a final question. One Milwaukee was never willing to ask. What if Emma Richter wasn't studying the spirals? What if she was creating them, Milwaukee? Silence wasn't incompetence, it was complicity. The archives buried the Richter files, the schools rewrote the textbooks, the police denied the disappearances, and the city paid out settlements labeled infrastructural disturbance claims to families who lost daughters to the spiral zones. But one woman, a librarian named Maris Dunley, refused to forget. She had been 14 when Emma Richter vanished, and she remembered the screams outside her window the night the sky turned yellow. In 1992, Dunley quietly compiled a forbidden catalogue inside the Milwaukee Public Library. It wasn't digital, It wasn't indexed, it was hidden inside a weather atlas from 1948. Inside, photocopies of Richter's calculations, eyewitness reports about vibrating soil, microfilm clippings blacked out by the city, and one letter, typed, unsigned, never mailed, addressed directly to the U.S. Geological Survey. I believe Milwaukee is experiencing a topological bleed. The Earth isn't stable here, it's thinking. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because the truth was hidden not to protect you, but to prevent you from recognizing the pattern inside yourself. When Maris Dunley retired in 2001, her final act was unthinkable. She made one copy of the Forbidden Catalog and sent it to a single address, a small off-grid research station in Barrow, Alaska, home to a fringe geophysics collective known as the Confluence Group. They replied with just 4 words: she was never alone. That same winter, a new spiral appeared. Not in paper, not in chalk, but in frost. Outside the old Richter lot, captured on a security camera, a perfect geometric spiral made of crystallized ice, forming naturally on asphalt, without precipitation. And it moved. Over 6 hours, the spiral rotated counterclockwise, shrinking inward as if pulled by something below. But here's where the truth hits bone. A whistleblower from the Confluence Group leaked a transcript. It was from a recovered recording believed to be from Emma herself, dated October 1873. The voice is faint, trembling. I didn't discover the spiral. I answered it. It asked me to arrange. It promised to remember. Suddenly, Emma wasn't just a girl lost to time. She was the instrument, a living signal. Everything she touched, equations, children, geography, even memory itself, became a transmission device. The spirals weren't maps, they were keys, and Milwaukee was the first lock. You don't need to believe any of this, but tonight, if you feel something shift beneath your feet, and your vision blurs for just a second, like time tugged in the wrong direction, ask yourself, what if Emma's memory isn't fading? What if it's activating? The final truth wasn't found in a book, not in a church ledger, not in a coroner's file, not even in Richter's spirals. It was carved into bone. A fragment of a mandible, female, adolescent, with unnatural density and growth patterns, was unearthed during a construction dig in 2023, exactly where Emma's boarding house once stood. The city sealed the site in under 48 hours. Official reason: soil instability. Unofficially, that bone shouldn't have existed. It bore microscopic glyphs etched along the jawline, not tool marks, not erosion, but deliberate, intelligent, inhuman. The Confluence Group ran a test. They submitted the patterns to a custom-built algorithm designed for cryptographic languages derived from non-linear mathematics. The result? The glyphs formed a recursive message that read the same forward and backward. The one who called will call again. Hit that subscribe button and comment below what state you're watching from, because this isn't folklore. It's future tense history echoing through your veins. A janitor who handled the mandible before it was seized by the Department of Energy, yes, energy, not anthropology, reported hearing a sound in his dreams for 13 consecutive nights. A hu. Like wind wrapped in static, slowly folding in on itself. On the 14th night, he collapsed. No trauma, no stroke. But on his hospital room wall, the monitors displayed a spiral glitching through the EKG feed. He drew it in blood before he died. The spiral wasn't Richter's. It was new. Not a call for help. A summons. And then there's the letter. One final document typed in 12-point courier left anonymously at the Milwaukee Historical Society, dated 1873, signed only E. If this reaches you, I succeeded, not in stopping it, in embedding the pattern. You must remember, it doesn't come from below. It awakens from within. So here's the question that no one in power will ask you. What if Emma Richter didn't disappear into the spiral? What if she became the spiral? Because when you look at her numbers, when you map her equations, when you feed her glyphs into visual rendering software, you get one thing: a shape, a spiral, but not a flat one, not Euclidean, not even terrestrial. It's the shape of consciousness turning inside out. And the last known audio from the Richter property, recorded by a paranormal team in 2016 before the land was restricted, contains one line, spoken by a child's voice. She's still writing. Not with ink, not with words, but with you. The girl science couldn't explain. She wasn't a girl anymore. She was a signal. And now that you've heard her name, she's begun writing in you. Do you feel it? Then it's already too late. Then